Why know your numbers? I mean, this is the business question you hear about the people that do you know your numbers? Do you know your numbers? As you start being coached and you start being around like-minded business owners, people start asking you, well, do you know your numbers? So let's discuss, what does do your numbers really mean? There's two ways to look at this. Hopefully you gather both of these scenarios that you do know. So there's, do you know your numbers from an accountant standpoint on your tax return? Do you know what your paper percentages are, your labor, your cost of goods, just whatever. All of these things that have to do with your complete, at the end of the year, what are your numbers like that? So that is your scope of work that you did, broken down category wise, percentage wise of costs to your profit, right? So that's knowing your numbers. And so that's a good way, to buy land, buy property, be able to get loans. This is what they're going to use for that. And it's the real gauge of your business. It's the actual everything that you are, right? I mean, that's your tax return, that's your numbers. Now, looking back at that every month, quarter, a year that you do this at, you can then start tweaking these numbers to get better numbers, to get better profits, right? Or you start seeing things that you can fix by seeing it here. When you get to know other business owners, and you start comparing numbers, which in my business coaching that we will do is, if you own a service company, if your labor is like 45%, which is not that uncommon because we don't sometimes have a lot of costs involved. Is that for your niche? Is that a good number? Or is your labor, let's just say you're an electrician and who does incur some costs with materials and stuff, wiring and whatnot, and so lifts and different things they may use. Um, for the electrician, his labor, you know, uh, due to his costs and everything else, his labor might be at 35% at the end of the year. And then when we start seeing what other electricians have, and they're all doing the same amount of, revenue and have roughly the same COGS, cost of goods sold, that they might have their labor percentage might be everybody's under 30% and this guy's at 35. So you start going, well, why am I at 35? And there might be good reasons. You may have a slower year where COGS were a little higher. You're putting out more marketing and just whatever. But your labor percentages, you start to get to know things. You start understanding why those numbers are like that. And as you get to know your numbers, you get to start advancing your company and starting really knowing where to spend your marketing, at the end of the year, how you get to start budgeting of how to do this and start having goal settings for this. And as you're doing all this, you should be sharing these numbers with the people that matter. Your CFO should be and your accountant should be working together. You should start having target goals for all these percentages, departmentalized down to everything you do. And this is how you really start growing the company, by knowing your numbers that way. Then there's number two. The number two way to know your numbers is you must know your this week's, next week's, and any week out that you're scheduled out. What are your production numbers? What are your sales numbers as given as they're going, so that you can project and all that stuff. So essentially, let's just say you're in this week. Let's just say it's a Monday. So last year, this year, let's say we did $50,000 in sales. So our goal target is to maybe do 60,000 because I want to do more than I did last year. And what are we doing for sales? Our goal sales. And every day you find out what the sales, what your sales are per day, adding up for the week as they happen, not next week telling me. I want to know as the week is going on. So you're also putting in, that's your sales. So sales may not fall on production this week, right? So you want to be adding up your production. Now you might be booked all week, so your production is, let's just say, 70 grand, 70,000. And if you know your numbers, you know your COGS, what your bills are roughly for everything that's paying you, paying for all the everything. So let's just say your bills are 58,000. You have 70 up for production on Monday. For this week, you know you're profiting for the the 12 grand, right? So to profit. So then you got to manage that through the week to see if you're going to actually hit the $12,000 because things fall off. It rains, people go on vacation unexpectedly. People die. They have to go to funerals. They reschedule. So you have to know, and everybody in the business should know how to make sure that if something's happening to your numbers, to be able to get right on it. Your management and you for sure need to know how to schedule for profits. And there's a whole system in this that I teach in my coaching of how to track all this, how to do it daily. And it's super important because if you manage the week by day and maybe even by the hour, and that's just knowing your numbers and seeing and knowing someone has to have a beat in the business, whether that be you or a manager, general manager, sales manager, whatever, call center manager. Somebody has to be on it to react and be proactive to get your numbers right. So you're not reacting if you don't know your numbers. So like if you had a $70,000 a week on the books, you may or may not known that, but let's just say it rains, or let's just say a customer that has a $14,000 job decides that he can't do it this week and it must go on in, like, let's say 3 weeks. Well, if you don't even know that this is happening, all of a sudden your bills are 58, you had 70, and now you're doing 56,000. So now you're slated to lose $2,000 for the week. And if nobody knows anything and knows your numbers, you're scheduling to lose money and you're not even reacting to that. So you're going to find out next week when you eventually do your numbers that, holy shit, I just lost 2 grand. We were busy. Busy is the biggest force factor in losing money that you'll ever do. You look busy and then you manage the business, you're in it. And what happens? You should have been managing on your business and knowing what's happening in real time to be able to fix what's happening so that you don't lose money. The worst thing that can happen to you is be booked out a month. Let's just say you're booked in that type of business, service business. We are literally booked out 3 weeks to a month. And for 3 weeks to a month, you lose money every week. Why? Because shit happens. Stuff will occur, that things will fall off, and you don't replace it with equal or more value on the schedule. So now what happens? You're running a losing business because you're running too close to your levels of what your production is versus sales versus profits. So when you're doing that, all of a sudden you just go a month, you lost money, but you're busy. And the worst thing that people tell me as a business owner when I first start coaching them is I will start asking their numbers. And it's hilarious. I know my numbers. Okay, what do you have? What did you do last week in production? What did you do in sales? I don't know. My accountant will tell me, my bookkeeper will tell me at the end of the month. I'm like, okay, so let's add it up. Let's see what you have. Oh, no, we don't need to do that. My CRM will do that. To go pull a report. Okay, so now I see the report says, yeah, this much up for sales or production or whatever. Now let's literally go in to your calendar and let's count it up. You know what? It never equals. So you got to know what there's a method to where, and that's kind of giving you a little bit of insight of how you start to know your weekly numbers. But when you manage your weeklies, dailies, and possibly, like I said, to the hour, your end of the year comes out to be good. So if you want help with this, go ahead, reach out to me, chadmurray.biz. You can schedule an appointment there, and I'll be glad to start coaching you, to teach you how to schedule for profits and know your numbers.